Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Beyond Recovery, Drive Loyalty with Impactful Guest Experiences. My name is Jason Freed, and I'll be moderating today. Beyond Recovery is an ongoing series of content and webinar discussions that SHR and Hotel Recovery are working on together, really aimed at helping hotels capture the most demand as travelers start getting back on the road. So before we start, a couple quick things. The audio is on mute, obviously, for all the attendees, but we do have a chat box, so feel free to ask questions during the presentation. We'll take a few minutes at the end to answer as many questions as we can. Also, the session is being recorded, and tomorrow we'll send an email to all the registrants with a link to the video and slides. So I'm really excited about this topic, personalization. You know, I think as we're all sort of thinking about this, personalization has become a bit of a buzzword over the years, right? But with the COVID pandemic over the past year, I think we all really saw an opportunity to kind of reset and rethink how we're thinking about presenting guest experiences and really making sure we're preparing for what the future of hospitality looks like. And, you know, something I'm sure the folks on this call here are experiencing as guests come back into our hotels. They really have high expectations, right, for what their experiences should be. They've been dreaming about travel for over a year now and waiting to get back out on the road. And they remember their best trips, right? They don't remember the worst ones, but they remember those awesome experiences they had when they were out on the road and staying at hotels. And they expect that when they're returning. And that's challenging, right? Today, I think, as we all know, with cost-cutting measures remaining in place and smaller staffs, providing those wow moments is challenging. And that's where personalization really comes in. That's where this idea of just going a little bit further and letting your guests know that you appreciate them and that you're excited to have them back in your hotel. So that's what we'll be chatting with our panelists about today. And, you know, this is more of a discussion than a presentation. That's how we like to do these. We keep them really casual. So we're going to get to know our panelists, and I'll be asking each of them questions, really trying to get some takeaways that you or our audience can implement at your properties to help make a difference in your recovery efforts. So with that said, I'm going to quickly introduce the panelists, and I'll have each of them sort of tell you a little bit more about their company and about themselves. Amanda, let's start with you. So I have Amanda Gardner, who is Director of Revenue at Basecamp Hotels. Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about Basecamp and your role there?
Yeah, Basecamp started about 10 years ago now in 2012, June of 2012, the first property in South Lake Tahoe opened. And I've been with them for 8 years. So came in as a general manager of that property. And then I've been with the company as it's expanded. So we moved to Tahoe City and then Basecamp Boulder. So my role has been sales, marketing, front office, revenue, and then, you know, as the company continues to expand, really focus much more on revenue and driving promotions and working very close with our marketing team. So we are definitely all about community, communal spaces, really being a springboard for people that are coming in to explore and to be a real resource for people to get out and make the most of the beautiful locations where we're located.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the hotels. I think you, correct me if I'm wrong, three properties, right? And they're all, which I really love, this is a really cool concept, they're all old converted motels, right? So they're all exterior corridor?
Exactly. So the Basecamp brand is really about taking, some distressed older motels. Most of the properties that we have been, were built in the 60s, early 70s. The Tahoe properties were built for the Squaw Valley Olympics in the 60s when Tahoe really built up. So yeah, there's a lot of history in the properties. They're definitely quirky. And so we, go in and try and breathe some new life into them, give them a little bit of soul, make them fun. But yeah, they're all, exterior entry. They have, they have fire pits and different, little focal points at each property. But yeah, in general, they're definitely converted. We have lots of different room types as well, lots of bunk beds. We have a great indoors room, which is sort of a fun play on camping for those who don't really want the full experience of bugs and weather and all of that part of it. So yeah, we've got a lot of different options for it's, fun little getaway for families and couples, and kind of run the gamut with leisure
That's
travel.
awesome. Sounds perfectly positioned for this sort of new era of post-COVID travel with social distancing and whatnot, aside from the communal aspect, which we'll get into. I'm sure that's been a challenge for you guys. So next up, we're going to move over to Shawn Bryant. Shawn is CEO of Wellsboro Hotel Company. Shawn, tell us a little bit about Wellsboro.
So the Wellsboro Hotel Company, we're located in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania, which is in the rural north central part, about an hour south of Corning, New York. And the company has two properties we own and manage. One is the Penwells Hotel, which is 150 years old. It was built in 1869, and it's a very historic property. We have 69 rooms there. And then down the street, about a block, is the Penwells Lodge. That has 89 rooms, a little bit like Amanda's properties. We started as a motel in the 1960s at the Lodge. Over the years, various additions turned it more into a hybrid property, and we expanded in 2012 with kind of a suite tower, more like a more chain Homewood style kind of suite accommodation. So we have about 158 rooms altogether that kind of run the gamut of every type of room you can imagine. And we mainly cater to people who want to get away to a small town. We have beautiful gaslit Main Street, so it's very quaint, but also are surrounded by state parks and have a lot of people coming for our Rails to Trails. Visit the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon is kind of our calling card, a little bit different than the one in Arizona. But a lot of people come to see summer and fall being our busiest seasons. So we also own a movie theater and a few other businesses, all wrapped up into the small town hotel business.
And Shawn, give us a little insight into your role. I know you're CEO, but I'm guessing at a small company like that, you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, my wife and I are kind of hands-on. We're the primary owners, and we really, our roles run the gamut. And her family was involved in the hotel for generations. Her family has an independent department store that's more than 100 years old here, and took an interest in the success of the town generations ago. And we thought that'd be an interesting thing to do about 11 years ago now that we've been involved. And we have great staff, and we kind of fill in the gaps where there's gaps.
Very cool. Very cool. Can't wait to hear more about it. Next up, we're going to move to Allegra Medina. Allegra is Director of Product at SHR. Allegra, tell us a little bit about SHR, the products that they offer, and what your role at SHR is.
Sure. So SHR is a technology provider for hospitality. We have started with our central reservation system as a distribution tool, which has grown from there into a call center application. So we offer CRO tools, we offer booking engine, revenue management system, CRS system, and then a fair amount of integrations from all of those to either between the two or between all three, and then to external sites. So what we try to do is really focus on helping the Amandas and the Shawns of the world to connect their from their on-property technology to the world, from using distribution as a start focus, because everything starts with a level of distribution. How are you presented out to the world? And so our focus has been really to provide good technology tools to help these guys achieve their business goals and their business dreams. My specific role is focused on the CRM. So we have a relatively newer product called Maverick CRM, which is a customer relationship management system, which feeds right into our topic today of personalization. And so as in my role on the product team is to help develop the tools within the CRM that are really needed and that work well for hoteliers to be able to use a CRM in all ways that it should be able to be used, and then also to help ensure that it fits and fills in all of the gaps of what Amanda and Shawn might need, not just today, but also what they might need tomorrow. So being very forward thinking and how we can create something that helps them to drive their business forward.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us, Allegra. Appreciate it. And we will dive more into those personalization topics and what hotel companies are using CRM technology for as we get into this conversation. But I do want to start, well, first a quick note. We did have a fifth panelist who was supposed to join us, Lucas Beck from Asana Health Spa Hotels, had an emergency this morning, is not able to join us. So our thoughts are out to him. Hopefully everything's going smoothly with that. So we will get in, as I was saying, we'll get into the CRM technology and how it's providing the capabilities that hoteliers are looking for today. But I wanted to start a little bit with sort of a state of the market, if you will. And I want to ask Shawn and Amanda how things are going at their hotels. Obviously, it's been a roller coaster of a year, but I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Don't want to say that the COVID pandemic is over yet. But you guys are the experts. You're seeing it every day. I'll start with you, Amanda. How's business at Basecamp these days?
Things are starting to pick back up. We have really benefited from our locations and being so close to so many outdoor attractions, and just being, in the mountains has been a huge benefit for us. And then also going back to the old motel design and outdoor entry and having everything so separate, it's been very, I don't want to say easy, but it's been easier for us to be able to manage that guest experience and really, keep all of that very separate and clean for guests. So that's been great. And in Tahoe specifically, we had a strong summer last summer. We're seeing events and things starting to come back a little bit. And that market has always been, it's a great weekend getaway for the Bay Area, and it's a great drive market. So that's been a bit stronger. The problem child a little bit more has been with the Boulder market, where we were so reliant on group business and air travel and with the universities. And so that has only just started to make a comeback. And we've really had to switch strategy a bit more to, leisure market rather than so group focused, which, with Tahoe, we've kind of adopted a lot of those marketing strategies and implemented them in the Boulder market as well.
So as guests are coming back, I'm wondering what's different today than 16 months ago or 18 months ago. I mean, obviously you've got mask mandates in place and things like that. Is it a whole new world? Tell me, is it challenging today to welcome guests, or?
I don't know if it's a whole new world. It's definitely a different world. But, we've always been, the Basecamp brand is all about community, and we have all of our communal spaces, which has always been a huge highlight. So that was a big shift for us was, how do we really still focus on this and give people a chance to, experience it and still have the Basecamp experience and still be able to feel safe. So, we've implemented a reservation system and things like that. But for guests coming back, it has been strange for the front desk staff. We've always had such a connection with guests, and the Basecamp brand is, it's relaxed and it's fun and it's about connection. And so to not only to have masks, but to have, the lobbies got really reduced hours and feeling like you kind of have to keep your distance. There's been definitely a shift with the staff of, how do we sort of push through that and still connect? And, you can obviously see smiles in the eyes and things behind the mask, but it's, it's not the same. So it takes more effort to really make the connection. And also then you're trying to make people feel comfortable and reassure them and let them know that you're taking all the precautions and you're really aware, and you want it to be the best experience that they can possibly have. So.
Awesome. Super helpful. Shawn, I'll ask you the same question. How's everything going at Penn Wells?
Things are going well, all things considered. Last year and even to now, the groups business, our banquets, all food and beverage operations were really upended by the restrictions, the regulations, and just the safety precautions that need to be taken. We're a drivable rural destination though, so we still have leisure travelers in most of the months. There are a few months where travel was really restricted, but for the most part, last summer and fall, we still saw leisure travelers, a lot of people looking to get outdoors, probably younger, more family-oriented travelers who were more willing to travel, and also a second group of people who maybe weren't taking COVID as seriously as a lot of the rest of us, so they were okay to travel. Looking into this year, I think it is going to be a hot year for road trips. There's no doubt we're expecting more business than last year. On the leisure side, still the groups are taking a while to gear back up. And I think what we were missing last year is the older traveler who is a little more cautious about traveling. They're mostly vaccinated now to the extent they want to be, and we'll be able to travel again this summer. So I think that will work into a good mix for us in the coming year.
Awesome. So I'll ask you, Shawn, I'll stick with you about this idea of elevating the customer experience today. Would you agree? I mean, something you guys aspire to do as we move forward?
I mean, I'll answer that as a clear yes. We certainly aspire to do that. I mean, as a small company, I mean, we've always tried to do that. As I mentioned, I've been here since 2009. I have the same two managers at the two properties that I had then. And our travelers know those managers. We have a Dickens of a Christmas festival every December, and the guests come back year after year after year. And they'll bring my lodge manager presents, candy, nuts, gifts. Like, they know her and she knows them, and the same way at the hotel. So it's kind of an old style of personalization. But the question for me, and I think where it gets into some of the technology, is I can't do that from where I sit with multiple responsibilities. Probably the next generation of our lodge manager, Sandy, who's just a dynamo. It may not be the same. I'm unlikely to have someone who's a manager for 30 years at our property. So how do we use technology and help the staff to be as good as she has been to make those guest connections? So it's definitely something we're working on really every day to think about that.
Amanda, how is Basecamp looking at personalization today and really using, preferences and past day history to provide those wow moments for guests, if you will?
Yeah, we are in the process of implementing some tools to be able to do that with Maverick. So, up until now, it's been a very similar to Shawn. It's been kind of on the front desk staff to make some of those relationships. And we, definitely had that with return guests and recognition, and just, even to the level of, hey, I know you guys were headed out on this hike this morning, and they come back, and how did it go? Just those conversations. There's always been a lot of that, but it's been very hard to, with new staff and training people, to have that continuity and to make it relatively easy for them to identify people that are coming back. So I'm really excited to be able to implement the CRM and have those reporting capabilities where we can make it easier for the front desk staff. My background is front office, and so I always kind of have the front desk goggles on of like, how is this going to make life easier for them? And, it should be fun for them. So that's part of it is, when you have those connections and you are able, it's like welcoming a friend back. So anything to make that reporting easier. And then with preferences, that's just an extra, that's like the cherry on top of an extra layer, to be able to say, hey, not only do I recognize that you've been here and it's so nice to have you back, but I know that you liked, this craft beer that we had last time, and so we've got it on tap. And those sort of little things that that we have only been able to do just on a very case-by-case basis will be able to become a brand-wide standard.
Yeah. Allegra, you are a pro in this area, and I've learned so much just from talking to you about the capabilities that are out there, right? And I know you've got some history at a hotel company overseeing their personalization efforts. Talk to us about why it's so important, and why what the right personalization strategy does for your hotel, the benefits that it gives you.
Sure. So I think it's not a secret that why it's important is more psychological than anything else, right? People in general want to feel like they not just have something to gain, but that when people associate themselves with a brand, whether that's a big brand or a small one, it's an emotional connection, and so it's psychological. If you feel like the experience is robotic, then you don't feel cared for. Um, so at its very highest level, it's very much a lot of that, right? Where it gets valuable to hoteliers is by building this level of trust. And I talk a lot about trust with clients or with customers, with hoteliers, between their staff and their customers. It is getting that guest to trust your hotel, to trust your staff, to trust your brand, to trust you. And that trust equals engagement. So with personalization, I mean, it is a buzzword. It's not new. We've been talking about this in the CRM world for a really long time, and trying to get it into a level where it's useful beyond just email marketing, because this was traditionally the focus where, oh, I can send an email and it's got personalization tags in it so I can put their name. And we've been getting thousands of those now for years. So we, as hoteliers, we have to actually take that all the way through. And so creating a personalized guest experience from the very moment throughout the entire guest journey that they connect with your brand, with your property, whether that's because they made a reservation on an OTA site or through a travel agent, or they called your property direct, is kind of irrelevant. You have to look at where are they coming in from this funnel, and you create an experience from there forward in every way that you can control, right? So if you take your own personalized website or booking engine, for example, and you can adjust what that person sees based on who they are and what you know about them, maybe from a guest recognition perspective, then right out of the gate, you're recognizing them and they have this kind of level of, oh, you know me, and you're giving me something that's special just for me. You follow that through in the booking process, you follow that through with your communication strategy to them from the time that they connect with you online to the time that they arrive, in a meaningful way. So this is where it gets tricky for hoteliers, because there's still this kind of old-fashioned idea that, well, we should just blast people with all of these emails, and that's not successful the way that it used to be, right? It has to be catered to their experience and their relationship with you. By doing that, they start to trust you. When they arrive on property, the things that Shawn and Amanda are doing with creating this relationship and fostering that relationship in person is absolutely the key to all of this, because you can do everything perfect up to that point, but if that point, when they're there in person, that relationship can either be fostered or it can start to break down. And so you want to use whatever tools you have at your fingertips to be able to help it foster and grow and develop. And then when they leave, you continue that relationship. And that is what's going to help garner, get them to come back. So personalization is not just a first and last name, like what we used to think about it as. It's the whole experience. It's knowing something about them. And then using that information in a way that makes sense for them, not in a generalized, I'll do this for everybody kind of a way. Even if you are doing it for everybody, they shouldn't feel like it's for everybody, if that makes sense.
Yep, exactly. And I want to dig into the idea of loyalty programs here, and whether you need a loyalty program to do some of this stuff, to start recognizing your repeat guests. First, I'll ask Shawn and Amanda, do you guys have a loyalty program in place? Is that something you're looking forward to doing, or Is it not needed right now? Maybe Shawn, I'll start with you.
So we have a brand new loyalty program that is soft live that Allegra is shepherding
Awesome.
us through right now and we adopted Windsurfer as our CRS in early 2019, and then Maverick early last year, just as COVID was hitting. It's sort of my COVID project. I think I thought it was necessary at first to compete with the chain hotel 10 miles down the road, who, for corporate travelers, their company's paying for their room, they're staying with us for months for work, and they have a choice between getting points they can use at other hotels or staying with us. We think we have better advantages that we offer for the stay, but who can argue with the compelling nature of the points? As it's evolved, I think we're tailoring it more to that connection with our leisure guest. We're always thinking about how to match the right guest with the right property, because our properties are very different. What's the right room type for them? And then, because we're very destination based, what activities are they going to enjoy while they're here? So the loyalty program for us, it's an extension of Maverick. It's a way to build a profile, build a relationship with guests that can evolve in multiple ways in the future.
Awesome. How about you guys, Amanda? Have you implemented any loyalty program yet up to this point?
We are also in the process. We're preparing to launch, which is very exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah, but prior to working with Allegra on Maverick, we had worked with another third party to sort of white label throughout our booking engine. And it was really an interesting experience because it definitely impacted conversion, which was a goal. But as we were sort of getting into it and really analyzing, the value of it, we were realizing we're not necessarily, those guests that are booking because of that messaging in the booking engine. They're not particularly loyal to us, or they're loyal to this third party brand. And so there was a breakdown there with real value. And so then we started, and similarly to Shawn, yes, especially in Boulder, we're competing against big box brands that have these huge, well-established loyalty programs. So yeah, there was kind of a rub there of like, okay, people are cashing in their points, and yes, we have this great experience, but we don't have that element of it. So with the Maverick loyalty program, it allows us to have so much more control, and really, the Basecamp brand is so unique that we want to be able to have our voice in there and people really loyal to our brand and make that connection with guests, and then also have the value for us of, not having that third party go between and additional commissions and things. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really big next chapter for Basecamp.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Congratulations to both of you on that. Allegra, in your opinion, what are the benefits and the challenges, I guess, to a loyalty program? Do you need a loyalty program to start doing some of these guest recognition things?
You don't need a formal loyalty program. So this is something that a kind of a concept that we at SHR are doing that I think is a little bit unique, where you use some of the functions in the system of a loyalty program, but really what you're doing is you're doing at its simplest form a registered guest function. So this starts, if you think back 10 years ago or 8 years ago, when hotels first started doing the concept of trying to take business from the OTA to bring it direct, right? And they would say, well, how can I do that? I can do that with a gated rate, a special promotion that you can only get. Well, then you have parity problems. So then, okay, well, maybe we create this, you must sign in to gain access to this rate. And I mean, that's a function that, booking engines do today. You sign in and you have access to this 5% off or 10% off rate. So that actually is a recognition program. You
Right.
don't have to call it that. It doesn't have to have a formal name. You don't have to have points in place or have these really expensive, massive programs like the big box brands do. Those are costly. They're costly for hotels to run and manage, and the technology can be expensive for some of that. I mean, Maverick does all of that too, by the way. It can if you want it to, but it doesn't, you don't have to. You can break this apart and have a very simple concept of a acknowledgement within the booking path, a registration so that you can know them. This helps you to gather more information about people, about your customers by way of profile management, whereas a simple registration, they can't really manage their profile. They can't tell you more about themselves. So this gives you kind of a gated access into learning more about them, letting them tell you about their preferences, letting them kind of self-manage their own profile by giving you more data that you have then to work with in order to create a better experience. So it can be very simple, a very simple login, and then you can take all of that information and you can choose whether or not you want to publicly offer them rewards or special offers or specific, I don't know, like marketing material that is catered to them, and that you can do that publicly or you can do it privately. So I know I've talked about this with Amanda and Shawn before, where you have the choice in a good CRM to say, I want to recognize all of my members that spend more than $1,000 a year at my property by giving them every time they stay free breakfast, just as an example. You don't have to publish that is part of any program, right? You can just do it. And then it feels like you're kind of surprising them with something that's nice. You're doing something nice for them when they arrive. But you know, systematically, the system is recognizing them. It's automatically assigning it. It's going to put it on the arrivals report. It sends it to the front desk. So the front desk knows to give them this breakfast and that they're important. It can either email the guest and tell them they can expect it the day before their arrival, but it doesn't have to. It can show in their portal when they sign in, which even if you don't notify them in advance that this is something they're going to get or that they have this offer or a special reward, if they see it when they sign in, then it's a way to create engagement. They will see this list of all of these cool things that you've given them over time, and they think, okay, these people are like giving me all this stuff, and they really know who I am and they care about me. So you don't have to have a big loyalty program. You can just do some simple recognition and then use that based on what can you afford to do? What experience can you actually follow through with on property? In some hotels, the idea of a free breakfast, they can't do right now because they were doing buffet breakfasts and they can't do a buffet breakfast anymore. So the world has kind of changed for them. So what can they offer instead? You can do discrete offers that other people won't be able to gain access to. And then, and you can do that in a way where these customers, they don't have to remember some booking code or voucher code or type anything in. When they come to your booking engine, you're going to serve it up to them and say, happy birthday, here's 50% off or whatever. And only they can see it. So I think that's important. I think everybody should be doing that. So in a way, yes, you should have a program, but it doesn't have to be formal and you don't have to call it anything.
Yeah. So, all that stuff, I totally agree with you. And all that stuff sounds really great, right? And being able to do those things for guests and being able to automate that process really is the most important. So my question to you then is, implementing a CRM, it's not just as simple as implementing a CRM, right? To do all those things that you talked about, it needs tied into your PMS. It needs tied into your CRS, to your booking engine, right? If you want it to automatically show up for free on the folio, that there has to be an integration with the PMS there, right? How critical are those integrations, and how does SHR look at that?
The integration with the PMS, funny enough, is a little bit less important than you would think. If you're running a program that cares about how much a guest has actualized spend, so what was on their folio, for example, with restaurant spend and all of that, then you need that information to come back from the PMS. And so then it becomes a little bit more important. And there are a variety of ways to get that. So I would say the most important connection actually, and I've thought this for years, even before we had something that did it well, which Maverick and Windsurfer do it very well together, is the CRS connection, because this is your oftentimes your first touch point. If you're doing marketing and you're driving people into your website and you're driving people into your booking engine, this is your first touch and your first opportunity to try to get them, right? So having that integration is super important. And then I think the follow through, because not all PMSs have fields for loyalty member numbers, have fields for preferences, have fields for user defined fields. Not all PMSs have those fields even available. And then if they do, not all PMSs allow you any system to write to them. So even if they have them, they might not let me send them the information. So what we try to do is, how can we fill that gap? And one of the things that we do is we make anybody in the front office can sign into Maverick, look up a profile and see anything they need to see about it. So you can go in directly and look. That is an extra step. So we try to take the extra steps away from front office. There's a lot of pressure on front desk people to do things very, very quickly and build a relationship in 2 minutes. So we try to take that burden off of them. We can automate some reporting that goes to everybody in the front office as many times a day as the front office needs, that gives them a listing of every person that's coming in. And it's not just a simple rivals report. It tells them whether the person is a member of the recognition program or not, gives a list out of all of their preferences, gives a list out of those rewards. So this person gets free breakfast, or this person gets s'mores, or this person gets, a muffin or a free movie ticket at the movie theater at Shawn's, hotels. That it tells them that what they need to do for this guest, and gives them all their personal information as well. So then before that guest actually arrives, the front office has the opportunity to manage that profile and reservation in their PMS directly, by way of having gotten all of this. So they'll know they've stayed before, they just had a birthday, they prefer beer, not wine, and they get 2 breakfasts and a movie theater ticket. And they'll know all of that, at 5 a.m. the day of arrival, before, and then they can act accordingly.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. And I want to turn over to Shawn and Amanda and kind of ask, there's a lot going on here that Allegra is talking about, right? So how are we sort of operationalizing this, right? So how are you guys thinking about, not instilling this into your company culture, right? Is it somebody that, I'm sure you don't have somebody dedicated to working on personalization efforts. I don't think any of us are in a sort of world where we can hire somebody to do that right now. So who in your company is kind of overseeing this efforts? And then how is that trickling down, from like Allegra said, how are we operationalizing? I can never say the word. Operationalizing. There we go. I said it. How are we operationalizing this, right? From the leadership down to empowering the front desk to be able to do some of these things. Maybe I'll start with you, Amanda, this time.
I think, from the corporate level, it's more about giving the team the tools that they need. But We've always had a really small team with a lot of multitaskers. So yeah, there's definitely not, it's a team effort that everyone is buying into, and we're all about it. So when it comes to the operational end of things, then as Allegra was talking about, I asked her a ton of questions about what's on the reports and what does that look like for the front desk staff, and how easy is that to flag people, and just really the ease of use for the front desk staff then to be able to execute and get that information quickly. And they're always doing a million things, so we can't, from a corporate level, we really have to look at everything has to integrate seamlessly. It has to make sense for them in the workflow. It has to be part of something that they're already doing with welcoming staff or welcoming guests, and those connections already. It's just like an extra little boost to give them a little bit more firepower, in their arsenal, and there to make them feel like they're empowered to do the best job that they can do. And then the other part of that, in our implementation, we have a community giving aspect, so charitable donation to our local community that's built into our loyalty program. So that's just another piece of that connection that's so foundational to the Basecamp brand. And I think adds a lot of value with that connection of, you know, okay, every time you're staying, you're not only getting a cool thing, and yes, the front desk staff knows you and it's a warm welcome, you get your reward or whatever it is. And then also every time you stay, you're you know, giving back to the local community, to a trail building organization or something that's very in line with the brand. So there's a piece of, there's just more value there and additional connection.
That's a really cool concept. Tell me a little bit more about that. How did that sort of come together? How did you work with local partners to make that happen? I mean, and who are they giving back to? What type of organizations are, you know, how did that whole process come together?
Sure. The founder of Basecamp really has always, when we were talking about loyalty programs and how do we want to implement this, you know, a lot of the team conversations were, yes, loyalty is really cool and guests like it, but sometimes it can feel almost kind of empty, or, you know, like, well, I say a couple times, but what am I really, you know, and I get a couple s'mores, but there's not as much substance to it. And so how do we really make it something that's valuable, that's part of the stay, that's also very much in line with our brand values. So, you know, we've reached out to very much grassroots local organizations. So, you know, I mentioned trail building, and, you know, there's like the Tahoe Rim Trail, and climbing organizations, and, you know, fly fishing, keeping rivers clean, those sorts of things that when our guests are coming and staying and enjoying those things, we're directing them to go, you know, experience that. They have a direct impact then, even just by way of staying with us. They're impacting something that they're able to also, you know, enjoy and take advantage of while they're there, and come back and experience it again.
Very cool. Very cool. Shawn, your thoughts around sort of instilling this personalization into the culture of the company, and then empowering the front desk, or, you know, sharing this information, you know, just day to day, like how do you get this information in their hands so they're empowered to do these things for the guests and recognize these guests as they come in the lobby?
I think our desk clerks are going to take to it well when we fully implement the loyalty function. I mean, right now, taking our hotel, for example, you know, they're used to hunting through notes in their PMS. You know, we have guests who don't just sign up for a 2 double bed or a king bed. When they call and book a room, they want room 115. And
Wow.
so we pre-assign, and it frustrates me, and there's notes, and, you know, there's no formal process to that other than just our small staff kind of communicating to each other naturally and through the PMS. So I think as we integrate Maverick more into their operations, which we really haven't yet in large part, I think they'll take to it well. I mean, I've been really overseeing the Maverick side of things. I was overseeing most of the marketing before, and as COVID hit, you know, it just made more sense for something I could do. I mean, all the hoteliers understand this is a horrible time for hiring staff from the lowest levels to the very top, and I think COVID has just, it was like that before COVID. It's even more like that now as far as finding people. So I think they'll take well to it. One of our challenges right now, and our desk clerks in the real world have a lot on their plates. You know, sometimes they're there certain shifts alone. They're responsible for anything that happens in the hotel. That's always been the case. It's why some of them enjoy it. But now there's masks, and there's plastic, and there's certain customers that are upset about wearing a mask, and certain ones that want to know every detail of the cleaning process. It's just increased the stress on the front desk. So I think taking the desk clerks, what we're really working on is back to the basics. Like, we need a name, a full name, not just the group leader. And we need an email for every guest that comes through. And offering loyalty is one way to help with that. And there's legitimate needs we have that we can explain to the guests. And for safety reasons, we need to know who's in house. We need to be able to contact you. So just please give us the email. And through Maverick, there's very simple ways for them to the extent we market to them later, they can tell us very easily, what do we want to hear about? And do we not want to hear from you at all? So we're not bombarding people with emails and making it hard to stop that process. We're very conservative about how much we hit people with later. So we're really trying to get the desk clerks as we get out of COVID and talk to them more. Like, let's get as much data as we can without being intrusive for the guests.
Allegra, a light bulb kind of went off when Shawn was talking there, and he was mentioning how busy the front desk clerks are and how much they already have to worry about, right? And just adding this extra layer, we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be cognizant of making everybody's job at the property level more difficult with these things. And I know that SHR has thought a lot about that. And it's this idea of we're trying to make their jobs easier, right? We're trying to make things more efficient and automated, right? So I'll talk a little bit about that, how this, you guys have put these automation processes in place to help them do their jobs more efficiently.
Yeah, it is something that's in front of mind, and for me especially, coming from the hotel world for years prior to being on the the vendor side, is the two hardest jobs in a hotel are housekeeping and front office. They are the two hardest roles to fill, and sometimes the least thanked, right? They really have the hardest jobs. So wherever possible that we can, whether that's expanding our integration like we did with the PMS that Amanda is using at her properties, to try to bring as much data into the PMS flow as we can, so that they don't have to swivel chair and use two systems, because they don't always have time for that. Working on doing exactly the same thing with the PMS system that Shawn is using, trying to bring as much data in there, trying to give these guys the tools to help train their staff. So Shawn mentioned going back to the basics of like first and last name. The CRM is letting him see more clearly where there are some gaps in data, where things are not being entered the way that he would want them to be, in a way that helps him to build relationships, right? Or helps the property to build relationships outside of the face-to-face. So being able to have visibility is one thing that we do that I think a CRM can help do very, very well in a relatively automated fashion. So he can set up some like custom segmentation that is exportable in a report and use it as training tools for his staffing. So as much as we can automate from that perspective, even if it is very, going back and being very basic is a really good strategy, because if you start 10 steps in, especially with turnover or with where our focus has been, it is, I think, a really valuable thought. I mean, it makes the most sense. You're not going to be able to create a meaningful experience if you can't get a first name of your guest, right? So it just kind of what we can do to help with that, to help give you the tools to recognize that, and then to be able to come up with strategies for fixing it. And then as much as we're able to automate from a CRM side, we absolutely will. The CRM talks very well to the CRS, and even if the PMS doesn't speak as well to things that a profile or a CRM cares about, it does speak very well to the Windsurfer, to the CRS. So we've created kind of this, as much as less dependence on what the PMS will do, because we can't always control that. But from a distribution standpoint, there's a lot more options between the PMS and the CRS. So we have this kind of data flow where we allow for data to pass, even if it can't pass directly. So we'll automate as much as we can. We automate the guest communication. Shawn has some really good examples of like workflow campaigns where he's set up, you know, if somebody has identified themselves as wanting to hear from me about golf packages, for example, he has this campaign flow that is preset that gives automated responses, but that he's personalized, that use tokens and tagging that make it feel like he hand typed a message to his guests, and all of this is automated. So this helps him to be able to reach out and have those personal connections without having to do any work. He sets it up once and then he just manages it over time anytime he wants to change it. So those are really good examples of where we can automate. And then from front office, again, we will put whatever we can into the reservation record, whatever that PMS allows, and anything that it doesn't, we will ship these guys a report. And I always say, you start with your night auditors, you start in that little lull after the night audit routine has finished before the front office work of the day starts, and you can do what Shawn was describing, which is pre-registering, pre-assigning rooms, doing pre-check-ins, and going through that process so that the front office person that is looking at the customer doesn't have to do it then, because you want that done before the guest gets there, because they need to get that customer in and out and make them feel good in a very short period of time while listening to the walkie-talkie and having to deal with somebody else over here on the left. So we don't want them to have to do it. So we'll ship them this level of detail as frequently and to whomever they want. That way they have it at their fingertips all the time. And then of course they can go directly into the system, and people can swivel chair if they need to. But
yeah, I'm thinking about something that I wonder if we overlooked, that I'd like to ask you about, Allegra, and it's a little bit shifting gears from that. But can you do this with OTA guests, or how does OTA guests sort of throw a wrench into this? Are you able to recognize an OTA guest, or are there ways that you can recognize an OTA guest?
It's tricky with OTAs. So I'll say that if there are some OTAs that will pass little bits of data, like booking.com, for example, will share the phone number as well as the first and last name. Maverick can use that to connect that reservation and that person to an actual profile if we already know them. So it looks at them and says, oh, I know who you are. And then you can reach out to them, connect with them, you know them. Some of the other ones, you only get sometimes a first and last name pushed together in a single field, and then a generic email address that is back to, the system. It's not to the guest. And so you don't have enough, same is true with GDS, you don't have enough information to match them to anybody that you know. And so you can't communicate with them prior to their arrival. This puts an added step to the front office, which is, again, back to the basics that Shawn mentioned. When a person's coming in and registering for their room, you have to get accurate information, and it takes that extra 2 seconds to do it, but they really, really need to do it so that you can start to build the relationship. I will say that there should be and will be ways to reach out via the alias, because you do get the alias email, and it is related to the guest. And you have to be careful when using that you can't use it from a marketing perspective, because then you'll get kind of blocked or held off from being able to communicate. But that is open so that a hotelier can communicate with their future arrival guest. So you could and will be able to in the future with Maverick, send them a message that invites them to your loyalty program for their arrival that they have coming up next week, and tries to get some of that information in advance of arrival. That way you can kind of make that connection. So it's definitely a wrench. It definitely is more often than not something that the front office has to take on when they're checking people in. And in hotels where they have no front office, where they're using like iPads or kiosks, because that's a very real thing, and becoming more so in some areas where you have to have a way to kind of force that entry of those data points as well, so that you can you can understand that this is your booking.com guest or your Expedia or Agoda or whatever it is your customer, but they're the same customer that came over here and wanted to get s'mores and signed up for your loyalty program, right? Like,
Yep. Great. So we have a couple minutes left, and I know, so the way I'm looking at this is we've kind of touched on most of the guest journey, right? So when we look at pre-booking, we look at targeting these email campaigns to convert more. When we look at booking, we look at making sure that your CRM is talking to your booking engine and to your CRS and presenting the right offers and recognizing what the guest is looking for and serving up those offers. You know, I think it's critically important to carry that over, as Allegra said, into the arrival process, into the on-property experience, making sure that you're not speaking to them in a personalized manner before they get there and then ignoring them when they get there. I guess the last step in the guest journey is the post-stay process, right? So Shawn, Amanda, what are you guys doing, you know, after guests have checked out to continue to engage with them? Maybe I'll start with you, Amanda.
Right now we do, you know, a thank you email and then the post-stay survey. And then as we launch loyalty, you know, the communication, we hope to the goal is to ramp up that communication and with more targeted messages. So the more data we can collect about those guests, the more targeted campaigns that we can offer. So that's the goal going forward, is to really reach out and, hey, we know you enjoyed this specific thing, so, you know, come back and try this. So that's where we're headed with it, beyond just the thank you and please take this survey.
How important is that survey though, right? It's like critical to get their information. I'm sure you can use it. I mean, not only for marketing purposes, right, but for operational purposes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the survey that information is so critical, and for guest recovery, and then for training, and for every, you know, all the tools down to absolutely everything. So yeah, and getting people to actually be engaged and want to do the survey, because it's a little bit of an annoyance, you know, after you stay to get that. Yeah. So yeah, I think right now that's how we use it.
Anything different from you, Shawn, or pretty much the same there?
Yeah, instead of a survey, we just really encourage the post-stay email. Review us wherever you review things. Like, we'll take whatever feedback, be it TripAdvisor, Facebook, View. Also offer the opportunity to contact the managers directly, which we see when that happens. And sometimes that's useful, because often they'll share their kindest constructive criticism that way, and we see it and talk about it. So I think the other thing I would just stress as part of the post stay is, once they go away, we know more about them. We have fuller information. We know when they came, to a certain degree what they did. So prior to Maverick, I had a separate email marketing that wasn't integrated with my PMS. I can't recommend, for someone who's time pressed enough, combining those two processes, because I don't have to design 100 segments in advance. Just the PMS is gathering all that data. And if I wanted to spit it out, like, I'd like to reach out to my murder mystery attendees from past years, I can do that. I don't have to have an existing segment thought of in advance to do that. So yeah, that's how we turn the marketing engine on, you know, after gathering the post-stay information. We
had a last minute question come in from a panelist, so I want to address it. I want to make sure we address everything from the listeners. So, question from Karen: are you guys collecting addresses and emails upon arrival for direct and OTA guests? And if so, maybe some strategies to best do that. Either one of you can take it.
Yeah, I can say for direct, we, by phone and direct booking, we collect it by nature, we require it. For OTA, you know, I really stress the email, because that is like a lifeline to reach out to people for business and marketing purposes. It's hard for our desk clerks to capture the whole address, and you know, sometimes they just don't. Yeah.
How about you, Amanda?
Same, very similar experience. We don't necessarily collect full address, but we have, you know, zip code is a required field. Email is a required field always for direct bookings. For OTAs, very much the same as Shawn. We're trying to get the front desk staff to collect the email at the very least. And so that's just an operational training thing that, you know, is a work in progress, but it's always a challenge.
Awesome. All right, we are right at the top of the hour. So with that, I mean, I could talk to you guys forever, but we've got to wrap at some point. So with that, I really want to thank you guys, Shawn and Amanda, for coming on, and Allegra as well for being here with us. I think it's been an awesome conversation about personalization. I think we're all, you know, learning this as we go, and we have aspirations to really do a bunch of great things to wow our guests in the future. And I wish you all best of luck on that journey.
Thank you.
Jason.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Bye.
Have a great day.